In this episode, the Handyman Pros have a discussion about resources and availability for your DIY projects, or in that case, any home improvement project. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help you save you time, money, and aggravation. This edition is entitled Developing Resources. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy John. John, what's been going on this week?
Greetings, Larry.
And
this
salutations, by the way.
And here I am, upright, vertical. What's been going on this week? That is a good question. I did a little work this week on. Actually, we just had a show on fences, and guess what?
You did some fencing, yeah.
I did. I just fixed a gate yesterday, or the day before, I should say. So that's what's been going on this week. So. I got to I was thinking about some things that we're going to be talking about here. And it was, I was doing some other things around my house and some very specific things. And, a couple things that came up were painting and fixing some paint that I had I painted downstairs a wall, and it was just matching up paint. I actually talked to my neighbor about it too, and so this got me kind of talking about the specific stores and things, resources that are available to us that a lot of times that we don't know exist.
We don't know they exist, or we don't think about them, right?
We don't think about them,
yeah.
Right. And I told him, I said, if you're gonna try to match this paint, which is very hard to do in most cases, and do it right. And I had it done myself, and I went to a smaller standalone paint place that did it very professionally. Those places are very, very professional versus like a big box store to do those kind of things.
So it brings us to our topic. It's developing resources, right? So we decided, and I've got a story that we'll tell in a little while about what's been going on, what I've been doing this week, and some of the things that I do. But we got talking about this, you and I did, before the show, and we were talking about what are the kind of the usual sources, right? So where do people go, besides, of course, coming to the Handyman Pros radio show? Where do people go to get ideas to approach a project or to solve a problem? Well, basically, to solve a problem, right? So as I always say, there's the usual sources. Of course, the best one is the Handyman Pros radio show. Shameless plug, right? But there's the internet, there's YouTube, there's all those, basically the online sources, right? That are really, they're good, right? I mean, I get a tremendous amount of information from internet sources, and I know you do too. But they're not everything, right? They're not everything. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can go only so far, but at some point, it's great to have some human, asynchronous type of conversations. Instead of just a one directional, listening to a YouTube thing. I mean, a lot of that's great, but sometimes you're going to have to go in and converse with people. You want to talk about specific problems. Some to get that knowledge of wherever you might live as the local type of environment that you are in, which it's tough to really get that kind of information just kind of cruising through the internet.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. We were talking about just simple things. We're actually going to talk about this in a little bit, but we were talking about weed control, and both you and I grew up in the north, right? We grew up in very different climates. Really, it's a different climate than we live in now. We both live live in Atlanta, Georgia, as we've told everybody. We're in North Georgia, and gosh, this is a radically different climate than Chicago or outside of Rochester, New York. Very, very different. And the types of products and things that you use here are they can be. There's similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well. There's certainly differences in application time and things like that. And It's that local bias, right? So lots of times, if you're trying trying to do a specific project in your area, and it really, I think it's very helpful to have a local guy that's a professional or has some kind of resource that is to this local situation, right? And so I guess part of our thing is, John, where do we find those things? Where are they? How do you develop that type of resource?
Well, one thing is to be be creative and look in the places that you usually don't look in. A lot of times, and I said it before, is a lot of times people have never set foot in some of these places, and I haven't in some of them. I mean, I'm sure people can name stores I've never been in, but they're tremendous resources. For example, we were talking about the pest control.
Yep.
Right. And, you brought it up to me the other day that I usually go and get some pest control things, out of the big box stores and all those kind of things. But, there's people that have some very specific, and I've had it too. There's issues that you have with certain, pests,
Name them, John. Just name them.
Yeah. Carpenter ants. I could not get rid of those things, but there's stores out there that specialize in do it yourself, right, Larry? So you want to tell, you were on your way to a new property that you acquired, and you want to tell the audience about that experience.
Yeah, so we're in the process. We'll actually close here very shortly on this new house, but in our initial inspection of the house, I noticed there were a certain, how shall we say it, I like to call them the Nazi cockroaches, but they're German cockroaches. And German cockroaches, folks, if you've never had them, you don't want to have them. They are prolific. They are everywhere. And they are in the when you see one or two, they're in the thousands. And I found all of this information out. I had a rental house. This goes back many, many years ago. And I had this rental house. I'm not going to tell the whole story about opening the door and they fell on my head. That was the opener. There's more to it, but we're not going to get into that. But for years, I had been driving by this place, and I'd always noticed the sign. And the sign was called Do-It-Yourself Pest Control. That was the sign. It sits up on top of the store. And I said to myself, you know what? I am going to just go in there and see what they can do about these. At the time, I didn't know they were German cockroaches, but about these cockroaches, right? And I mean, they were everywhere. So I walk in the store, and this is it's a local Atlanta shop, and it's really a very small little, I would call it almost a boutique shop, right, John? I mean, it's not huge.
That's a great way to characterize it.
Yeah, but so I walk in the place, and of course, they have things up on the walls, like, they have, what's your problem? Ants, spiders, cockroaches, mosquitoes, boom, boom, boom. They've got signs up on the front. And below that, they have all these products. So in my initial exercise with these guys, I walk in and I say, well, I've got roaches. And he looks at me and he goes, what kind do you have? And I said, I don't know. He said, do you know what they look like? I said, yes, I do. He pulls out a book, a 3-ring binder folder, and he opens the pages to cockroaches, and he has actually dead cockroaches in these little pictures. I mean, like little pouches, right? So he had actual. I go, oh, well, that's the one. And of course, it says German cockroaches. He's like, oh yeah, those are German cockroaches. Yep. Then he goes right over there. He said, get XYZ product. This time he told me to get a particular product called Invicta, and he says, get that, take that one. And he gave me the instructions on how to actually apply it as well. And I think it's more the combination of it's that local knowledge base, right? He knew exactly. Well, he didn't know exactly at the time, but once he showed me the actual bug itself, he knew exactly how to get rid of them, exactly what to do. Then he gave me, this was like 2 minutes worth of training, but he's like, look, this is professional grade stuff. You've got to be careful with this. And he shows me how to do it. What a tremendous resource, because it allowed me to do it safely and inexpensively. And our goal here is to save you time, money, and aggravation, right? And the aggravation of it is I didn't have to set up an exterminator to come in and all that kind of stuff, right? So what a tremendous resource for that particular application. And John, you were telling me you've done some similar things. Well, you were talking about paint, right? And so tell a story just about paint. I know that, I know which story you're talking about. Mention the name as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's a Sherwin-Williams, and it's a standalone. And they are just it just really. I had a really hard time matching some trim paint, in the house. And I'm sure a lot of the folks out there listening right now are going through or are going to go through some improvements in their house. And I happen to be going through some, our floors. We're sanding down all the floors and restaining the floors and all those kind of the fun stuff. But along that way, there's going to be a lot of disturbance against all your trim work. With all the machines and all that stuff going on. I had a hard time finding a way to match our trim paint because, there's like 40,000 different shades of white.
Ugh.
And when I took one of the balusters in from my stairs into Sherwin-Williams, and I finally said, I cannot do this. Nobody can do it. And he's like, okay, let me see. So he spent a lot of time with me, and these guys seem to have a really good eye too for paint, and they really took the time to match it as they were drying it, and they knew all the little tricks of how to do this. And I walked out of there with a perfect match of the paint, and actually it was so perfect that when the painter came out and said I can't match that, and I said here's the formula, I already got it.
Nice.
And so when they were painting and doing some of the trim work, that they had the exact match and they didn't have to go through it. So I saved a whole lot of time and aggravation on both sides there trying to fix this issue.
And money too, right? Because you didn't have to paint all the trim, right? The alternative to make it right is to paint all the trim.
That's exactly right. Now, so that's a kind of a lesson learned in when you're really serious about matching paint. It's a great place to go. So just like this DIY pest control place, I never knew that there was some of these places like that. I do now, but back in those days, I never knew that you could get professional grade stuff like that and the advice from people like that, because I had to call out, an exterminator one time to try to get rid of a very specific problem. I could not get rid of these carpenter ants, no matter what I got. And so he came out and, he's like, yeah, he goes, you're not going to get rid of them. He goes, I'll get rid of them, but it cost me a lot of money.
Right.
Just for one time for him to come out and, get rid of them. And I bet I could have gone right down to the store and got the same advice from him and the same type of products.
And then you make your decision at that point, right?
Correct.
Do you do it or do you not? Like you and I had this discussion just on pest control.
It's a good point.
I think we're going to try to get one of these do-it-yourself pest control guys to come on the show. So we might do a whole show just on that. But one of the things that, like, for me, I won't do my own termite stuff, right? Because I want the bond. So here in Georgia, folks, for you that are listening in other parts of the world, people will come out and bond your property. So they'll guarantee you against damage on the pest control. So if you do get termites, they end up paying for some of the damage. So
right.
I want the bond.
And you can't sell your house either without termite letter.
Right, exactly. So there's the termite letter, so stuff like that. So those are things that I pay for. But things like getting rid of my German cockroaches, really after doing it once. God, that one's the story. I got to tell the story. I just got to tell the story. Let me tell the story. So I get the stuff. I go, you mean it's like a syringe. You just squeeze it out. And the guy says to me, he says, okay. So he says, squeeze this stuff out. He says, tomorrow make sure you have your vacuum available. I'm like, for what? He goes, oh, you're going to need it. And I said, for what? He says, you're going to be vacuuming up roaches. I'm like, this guy's full of, he's full of foo-foo, right? No way. Brother, he was spot on. I mean, we vacuumed up roaches by the thousands. And as I tell the story, this stuff works so well. As I'm squeezing it out, the roaches are running up to the stuff and eating it. I'm like, this is nuts. I mean, that's how effective it was. And I say that because just like your story with the paint, right? When it gets right, when somebody spends the time and actually does an excellent job for you, you really have to you have to have some loyalty to these guys, because these guys have spent a lot of time and effort. And it's not even that, but it's just like what a problem solver, right? I mean, it's that ability to solve the problem. So we wanted to talk about one other one. And me coming, I grew up in at the time, it was a very rural area. So I used to do this stuff all the time, but we wanted to talk about farm stores, right, John?
Yeah, a farm store. You'll see them. They're kind of an outcropping of, you've got your big box stores, and you've got these type of stores that deal more with, the tractors and all kinds of different
we kind of call
equipment.
Them geared towards agriculture is what it is.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, they carry clothing and stuff like that for work clothing and things like that. If you've never stepped inside one, you should go in there, because there's all kinds of things in there that you will not find at the classic big box stores that we talk about all the time. And the advice there is the same as what we were talking about with these other places. They're very specific, and I always look at people like these, like gate closers and things like that on their driveways. I'm like, well, where do people get this kind of stuff? Well, here.
That's right. Yeah. Well, here. Right.
These are the kind of places where you can find these type of products. So it's it's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it is. And as you say, John, you walk into them, it's everything from like weed control, but on a professional scale. We're not talking about pre-mixed Roundup. We're talking about Roundup that's in the 5-gallon jug size that you mix yourself. But let me tell you, it's night and day difference, in my opinion, on how well it works. So
right.
Like when you spray the stuff, you get it at one of the farm, and there's so there's a chain store that's called Tractor Supply, which is outstanding, and then I've also have a local place that I go to that's just really just this little place on the side of the road, and they've got cattle gates and they've got watering troughs and they've got all that stuff. But when it comes to weed control and like particularly heavy, I had some bamboo infestation one time, and I went into the store. I said, "What do I do about bamboo?" And they gave me this product, and how hard bamboo is to kill.
Yeah,
oh
absolutely.
God, unbelievable. So he gave me this stuff, and same thing like the pest control store. I walk in there, he says, "Yeah, okay." He says, "Use this stuff." He says, "But here's the deal." And I said, "Yes." He goes, "You need to paint this on with a brush." He said, "Do not spray this." And I said, "Why should I not spray it?" He said, this is literally like ground sanitizer. It's systemic, meaning when it gets into the plants, it runs through the plant system. He said, "But if you spray this on the ground, you'll kill everything, including the trees." And I was like, "Really? It'll kill trees?" He said, "You're going to kill bamboo. You're going to kill the trees." I was like, "Okay." So he gave me the specific advice. He said, and you can find that advice in the manual, right? But if you want to have a fun time, read a manual on, this kind of killer, because it's it's not in English. It's in scientific stuff. It doesn't even sound like English. But he's like, "Yeah, just take a brush." He said, "Take a brush, paint it on." He said, "And you need to do it." And this was the real tip on the bamboo. He said, "You're going to need to do this on pieces about 5 feet apart." He said, "Because it'll run through the plants, but it'll only go about 5 feet. So I was, me being me, I'm like, I'm going to do this every 4 feet. And sure enough, I go and I paint this on the stuff every 4 feet, and give it about 2 weeks, man. That bamboo, it killed it dead. I mean, and trust me, killing bamboo, that is really hard, really hard.
Really, really difficult to get rid of.
And same thing is like going to the pest control store. He asked me, he said, "Well, what kind of bamboo is it?" And I said, "I really don't know." And he showed me pictures. He said, "This is what we have growing in this area." And he showed me and I go, That's it right there." And so he's like, Yep, use this, do this, do that.
Yeah.
4 or 5 minutes with the guy, because he knew exactly what I was talking about. Done, in and out of that store. Yeah, I spent a lot of money on the product itself, because it's not inexpensive, but the difference is that
it works.
It worked quickly. It saved me time, money, and aggravation, like a ton.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because it's not. I found that it's not the amount of the initial investment on these weed killers, and I've got a big stand of woods behind me, and there's vines, there's all kinds of things that I've been killing off over, and it's very difficult to kill those things. But the biggest thing is just to mix all that stuff up and just actually go out there and do it once and be done, or however the applications are. But if you go out there and you use an inferior product, you're just going to keep going out there and keep going, and repeat.
You'll get there eventually,
work.
but it takes forever.
It's awful. I'd rather pay that and have that advice from those those places, and you brought up a good point. It's those little places along the side of the road that really know their stuff, and they have those products that are specific to the need.
Yeah, yeah. So we also talked, we've talked in the past about your local hardware stores, right? So lots of times too, these are just some resources, folks. And these are things, if you've never been in one, we like Ace Hardwares, right? Or any hardware store, but the local hardware store guy, it's amazing what they know. And the other thing in my world, there's two in particular that I've been in. One of them's in up north of Atlanta in Cumming, Georgia. One's in Chamblee. I mean, these stores, number one, if you don't ask somebody in the store about what you're trying to solve, you'll never find it on your own because they've got so much stuff. And I was looking for a gasket one time, just a little rubber gasket. I said, "Do you have any of these?" And the guy goes, "Oh, yeah, I've got those." And he walks back. I would have never found them in that store. Right. Never, ever, 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 ever. He had so much stuff. I mean, huge amounts. He whips, and they were perfect. They were exactly what I needed for that application. And so that's one of my favorites. Those local, that old time local hardware store. Ace is really good about it, in my opinion. But even if you can just find an independent, there's one up here in Cumming called Glaze Hardware that it's just this guy, and he is the guy in the North Atlanta area for grade 8 bolts, right? So if you have the need for a grade 8 bolt, he's got it. I mean, you want a 2.5-inch grade 8 bolt, that guy's got it. It's nuts, right? That's like a $50 bolt.
No pun intended.
Yeah, right. But
I hear what you're saying. Those guys, and they're very happy to help out too. If you walk around in some of those bigger box stores, I'm not putting it down at all. I'm just saying that if you really know what you're looking for, and you have that knowledge, that's great. But if you're doing something very specific, and I have done some very specific work on plumbing. And when I go to those smaller stores like that, you're in and out, and you get the right product.
It's the right product. It's back to that aggravation effect, because nothing aggravates me more than having to go back and back and back, or buying, not that it bothers me, but I mean, I've given this advice before. If I'm doing a plumbing project, I buy all 3 sizes in, 3 different lengths, and then I just take it back. But it is nice to walk in and say, "Hey, I need this," and the guy goes, "Yep, this is it. Bing, 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 done." Right. Done.
That also brings up, on the plumbing side, that also brings up another thought, is that there are, specific plumbing supply houses too.
Very much so.
And if you've never been in one of those, brother, you need to go, because no matter what you're faced with, these guys know exactly what you're doing, how to do it, and they have the parts to accomplish it. And there's a jillion different parts in plumbing.
And I would say the same thing in lighting as well. If you have a specific lighting need, or you're trying to do, you're trying to change something out and you need to do lighting. I'm going to use an example. So I was changing on a commercial building. I was changing somebody. They wanted to get away from halogen light bulbs, right? So they had screw-in halogen light bulbs, but they're the great big ones. You're never going to find that stuff in like a Home Depot or anything like that. Not right. Discrediting, but these are they're kind of specialized parts. I went to this lighting store. I said, "Do you have anything that would work with this?" And I handed him the bulb, and it was actually the socket. I don't know enough about the sockets to know, so I took the bulb in. I said, "Do you have anything like this, an LED?" He whips me out this massive LED thing. It was huge, right? And I'm like, "Wow, that's it, right?" He goes, "Yep, it'll fit right in." He said, "Just screw it in here. Just make sure you got blah, blah, blah." Same thing. Gave me the advice. Done. Yeah. Now they had LED lights. The customer reduced his electric bill by something like $10 a month just for installing those light bulbs, right? Plus, he's never going to have to change them again for like eons, So it was, again, that special, folks. I guess what we're advocating is get outside your box of comfort and think about some of these specialty stores. You drive by them all the time, right, John? You drive by these places.
I do. It's funny how you drive by these places and you just don't notice. And now I look, because of working as a handyman and everything. I'm looking at all these places now that have, just like we've been talking about, a specific knowledge base and parts and products. It's really great. You just kind of need to pay attention.
Pay attention and take a trip through, right? So we're going to task our people. If you've never been in a farm store, go to a Tractor Supply. Just walk the aisles and take a look and see what they have. I think you'll be really surprised. Yeah. They're kind of cool. If you're a a handyman kind of guy, if you're a handyman guy, you're probably listening to the show, or a DIY person, you're going to be surprised. They have solutions for things that you've never realized exist out there. Just little things, all kinds of different things that are real common in a farm application, but there's plenty of applications for them elsewhere. And so that's our point, right, John? I mean, we're just like get out there and develop some of these other resources, some things that you haven't thought about, or things you've been driving. Look, I drove by that do-it-yourself pest place forever and never went in. And I'm so glad I did, because I had a great customer experience and he solved my problems, and now he's my go-to guy. So
right. Right. I hear you, and I think everybody needs to get out and do these kind of things. There's so much more that's beyond what you currently experience when you go to buy these things to fix up your properties.
Yep. So, folks, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, send us an email at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. Go to our website, leave us a message, and that's at handymanprosradioshow.com. You can send us a voice message via the same method. We are doing a contest right now on that voice message. It's the uses for blue tape that have nothing to do with painting. So leave us a voice message. We're going to give away a $25 Amazon gift certificate for that contest. We are taking we're taking voice messages up until July 2nd of 2020. And so we will do a random drawing for the best for the best suggestion, and we'll actually play that on the air. So if you'd like to join us in our efforts for using blue tape, because that's another one of the things that we've decided there's like 10 billion uses, and we're trying to figure out what they all are. But that all happens at handymanprosradioshow.com, and up on the right-hand corner there's a voice message. Leave us a voice message thing. We also have a Facebook group that's at Handyman Pros on Facebook, and if you would like to join the conversation, please. We love to have interaction with y'all. So that's what it is. John, there's a spaceship coming, John.
And I got my whole box of Craftsman tools, baby. I'm taking that thing apart.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.